are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on developing e-learning in-house, choosing the right tool for the job. My name is Lee Riley and I'm the e-learning team lead at Aurion Learning. I also have with me today my colleague Marissa Malloy, who will be facilitating the webinar. I'm going to hand over to Marissa briefly now to explain how the questions and polls are going to work during this seminar.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm just going to explain some technical issues here. So if you can't actually see Lee's screen on your computer, can I suggest that you just maximize the GoToWebinar application on your screen and close down any other applications that you might have opened. If you still can't see his screen on your screen, then just sign out and sign back in again. That usually works. So here on the screen, I've got the control panel, and that's what you can see in the top right-hand corner of your screen. The icons on the left-hand side, this here one here, if you click on that, that will either show or hide the control panel. If you click on the one below, that maximizes the window, this here one here. And if you don't worry about this one, this is just a hand-raising icon, and this final one is to do with muting, but we won't be able to hear you during this webinar. You will only be able to type questions into the application. So if you wanted to ask Lee a question, you would click on the question tab here on the control panel. You would enter your question right here. Yep, you would enter the question here and then click send. And as I am the facilitator, I'll be able to see your question, and hopefully at the end we'll have time for Lee to answer these questions. If we don't have time to answer all of your questions, we're going to put up a question and answer section to the Aurion Learning website afterwards, and you'll be able to view this at a later date. So to kick things off, Lee is now going to start by asking you a poll question. To give your answer, simply click on an option and then click submit.
That's great. Thank you very much, Marissa. So you should hopefully see the poll in front of you at the minute. So as Marissa says, if you just click on one of the answers and hit submit on the bottom right-hand side, that should pop up on your screen, and then we'll be able to make a start with the webinar itself. I'll just give you a couple of seconds to do that now. Okay, it looks like everyone has completed it in quick time as well. So I'm going to close this and we will move on. So back to the webinar in hand. This webinar is going to cover hopefully the following. We're going to have a brief overview of what authoring tools are. We're going to chat briefly about how you publish content from authoring tools. We're going to talk then about the types of authoring tools that are available and some examples of them, the pros and cons of these tools, a summary of everything that we've covered, as well as the factors that should go into your decision making when choosing an authoring tool. And finally, we'll finish off, as Marissa said, with a question and answer time at the end. And it is worth reiterating that we mightn't have time to go through all the questions. Please, though, ask them throughout the webinar, and any that we don't get to, we'll put up behind the Aurion site and send you a link to it at a slightly later date. Okay, so to begin with, it probably helps to know what an e-learning authoring tool actually is. It is defined as a software application used to create e-learning programs and content. Authoring tools allow for the inclusion of rich media such as video, audio, flash animation, interactions, quizzes. These can all help to highlight and reinforce the learning compared to simple PowerPoint-based text on its own. When it comes to publishing from authoring tools, there are three main ways in which your final contents can be viewed. And these are on, first and foremost, they can be published out for use on websites. They can be stored onto CD-ROMs for sending out to clients, and they can be put onto learning management systems. Learning management systems make up the major way in which e-learning authoring content is supplied, because it allows for the tracking and completion of various criteria. Whenever it comes to describing authoring tools, it helps to group them into similar properties. The groupings that we use are entirely arbitrary, though. They can be divided up using a range of different parameters. But for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to make use of three major groups. And these are first, the standalone tools. And these are applications that don't need any other software to run. We're going to use Articulate Storyline as our example of a standalone tool. Second, we have PowerPoint plugins. PowerPoint plugins require a compatible version of PowerPoint to be installed, and the example we'll be using is Snap by Lectura. And third, we have our online tools. Online tools do not require software to be installed in your computer. That makes them largely platform independent. And a good example we're going to use is Compos. It's also worth noting that there are dozens of other e-learning authoring tools available in the markets. We're going to be covering only a few of them. These tend to be the more popular ones, but they're by no means an exhaustive list of authoring tools. There are numerous others to choose from. Moving on then, we are going to have apologies. In the background, my program has just stopped responding, so we'll just let that load up. We're going to chat about Storyline to begin with. Storyline is the example we're going to use of a standalone tool, and these are, as I said previously, these are applications that don't require other software to run. They range in style quite a bit from those resembling PowerPoint, which Storyline will be an example of, to those resembling more along the lines of Flash, if anyone is familiar with it. Adobe Captivate would be a good example of that. The example we're going to use now is Articulate Storyline, which is just loading up now. Storyline is very intuitive to navigate as it's based primarily on PowerPoint. It uses quite a few of its functions. It uses quite similar tabbing along the top, or the ribbon effect, as you would tend to find. There's one key difference though, or one main difference between PowerPoint, and that is what we're currently looking at, which is the slide view or the story mode view in Storyline. And this allows you to see how your slides are actually set up, so they're not just a simple list of slides as you would get down the left-hand side of PowerPoint by default. This lets you see how content's branched between various sections, how those sections play in with each other, so how they're linked together, and how the overall pathway of the user can be seen, and how the typical pathway can be viewed as you go through. Moving into Storyline itself, you will see that, again, you've still got the Storyline mode on the left-hand side, so you can always see where you are, but you have new assets available throughout and new items. Timed events are a very useful addition to Storyline, which we can see here, and it allows you to be able to see quite easily how items are coming onto your page and at what stage they're coming onto your page. Moving on to the other side, you can see that we have triggers and layers as well. Triggers and layers can be easily applied to add interactivity and immersion to your course. Storyline also comes with several other very, very useful features, which I'll do a very quick run through of now. You have the ability to very easily create screen recordings and capture audio. You have the ability to add in characters, both illustrated and actors, which are in a range of poses. You can then use triggers and layers to manipulate these depending on what the user is doing on the page. And you also have item and page animation, which is great if used sparingly. I do stress if used sparingly. So just to move out to a published version of a sample course, you can see that once published, you have a skin view around any Storyline package. It automatically handles how you navigate through the system, which can be very useful. It saves that level of complexity in it. And you can see as well by the design, you're not really limited by anything within the package. Your creative freedom is your own. However you want to design your content to sit on the page, you're able to quite easily within Storyline. Just moving back in again. Overall, the major pros of Storyline are first and foremost that it is very feature rich. I've shown very quickly there the screen recording, the level of customization, the fact that it has quite a robust media player built in, so media handles very, very quickly and very easily. It also has numerous interactions and assessment types available, numerous quiz types, drag and drops, multiple choice, single choice, and a range of other ones also in there. It has good and complex branching as seen by the story view mode that we showed at the start. It has a very, very good community of support, which is it's probably one of its largest selling points. Anything that you don't know how to do in Storyline or have issue with, the forums within the Storyline community are excellent. They're very, very quick at getting back, posting solutions, giving you advice, giving you other options. Next, we have the fact that it allows for HTML5 output on mobile platforms. This is becoming more and more prevalent in this day and age, especially with the Apple iOS platform not allowing Flash to run on any of their products or any of their mobile products at least. This has meant that HTML5 is fast becoming the standard for platform-independent content, and it's something to be very mindful of. We have a good list of advantages for Storyline. There are some disadvantages as well that are worth mentioning. First, the cost. It's approximately £900 per license, and that's for a single user license. So it can be quite expensive to set up, for example, a group of contributors or developers requiring multiple licenses. It has also a fairly steep learning curve. For example, variables and layers are kind of required to make the most out of the tool to get the very best out of it. Because of this, it is very, very powerful, but it can be quite difficult to master. And finally, it's a very new product, so it's not fully documented yet. There are, however, online videos, tutorials and resources, along with the fact that Aurion Learning also have training available on Articulate Storyline as well, which can help you get around these obstacles. Overall then, for Storyline, there's a huge potential for it. Even though this is a very new product, we have already begun to use it for content authoring and have had some excellent results. Overall, we would highly recommend it. Moving on then to our PowerPoint plugins. We're going to use Snap as an example of it. I'm just going to bring that up here. Apologies for the delay. So, as I said previously, Snap is a PowerPoint plugin which requires a compatible version of PowerPoint to be installed. Plugins appear as an additional tab up in your PowerPoint menu, and they're overall, before we go into Snap itself, PowerPoint plugins are known for their ease of use and the fact that they inherit very, very much so from PowerPoint to actually create e-learning content. So if you're fluent and comfortable with PowerPoint as an application, you're quite far on the path to actually creating e-learning content using one of these more rapid PowerPoint tools. So Snap is very easy to use because of this. In addition to this, Snap also allows for the ability to add extra content such as audio, flash interactions, quizzes, and video, and then it allows for you to quite easily publish them out onto a learning management system, a CD-ROM, or a website. Interactions are actually created in a separate program to Snap. It's called Snap Empower, and it comes with an additional cost, which I'll chat about a little bit later on. And overall, although these interactions are very useful, they're not quite as robust as the ones you would find in Storyline, for example. So we have as our example here a very quick Snap demo, and you can see a published version. So Again, there isn't a huge requirement, or there isn't a huge stumbling block with the authoring tool itself when it comes to the design. If you're able to design up a PowerPoint slide, for example, to be very creative and nice and visual, then you can have the same within a program such as Snap. It inherits directly off that. You can see overall, though, that it's maybe not quite as robust. For example, the little player is perhaps slightly more dated in look. You have the playhead, which isn't really required if you don't have a video on the page. You can tab through. You can create, for example, tabbed interactions to click through content using Snap and Power. Overall, then, let's go back. We have our main pros for Snap as an authoring tool is first and foremost its price. It's aimed very much at the rapid e-learning development, and as such it's £65 per license or thereabouts, and this is again for a single user license. It is very easy to use and update, is a great selling point of it. If you have the ability to edit and update PowerPoint slides, then as I said, you're very close to being able to create e-learning content using this. It also possesses assessments and interactions. The assessments are built into Snap itself. The interactions actually come as Snap in Power, which is a separate little piece of software that you purchase as well. And again, that runs the cost of £65. So if you want to use interactions in Snap, you would spend approximately £130 all in. The major cons of Snap would be, firstly, its branching. The way it branches content is very, very simple. You basically have the ability to set up a button that skips you to a certain part of your e-learning course and then plays on from that. It's nothing near as robust as the likes of Storyline when it comes to branching of content. Its stability as well is based on PowerPoint, and for anyone who's used PowerPoint perhaps on a day-in, day-out basis will probably realize that it's perhaps not the most stable development platform to begin with. Including an extra tab or an extra ribbon plugin decreases the stability that's that much more, which just means it's slightly more prone to crashing, especially when adding in video and audio content. It is still quite stable though, but just not as much as, for example, standalone tools. And finally, it's a new product, so it's not overly well documented. But overall, it's aimed at developing cost-effective, rapid e-learning programs. Although not as robust as Storyline, it still definitely has its uses, and it is very easy to use as well. Overall, then, you can quickly turn around PowerPoint-based content and add interactivity with Snap by Lectora. It's not as robust or feature-rich as the likes of Storyline, but it would still be recommended for creating rapid e-learning content. Now, to move on in our list again. We have Compos, which is an example of our online tools. Online tools don't require software to be installed on your machine. It makes them largely platform independent. They do require an always-on stable internet connection, as all content is hosted on the Compos server. But they do allow for an excellent level of collaboration when it comes to creating work. Online tools do have a steep learning curve because they don't tend to act like traditional software. Because they're entirely web-based, their interfaces tend to vary greatly from what you would typically see in the likes of PowerPoint or the likes of any other standalone authoring tool. But they do allow for a good level of freedom of design. So we're taking Compos as our example here. Giving an example of Compos here, we have a fully online authoring tool which is accessible via your web browser. Collaboration is very much the key selling point of Compos, and you can see this right from the login. As soon as you log in, you see that there are shared news and postings. So you have the ability to add news, You have the ability to add blog postings. You have the ability to see saved chats from previous things or from previous chat conversations. You can see members. You can assign tasks to individual contributors and individual developers. And you can even email information between members of staff, between developers and subject matter experts, for example. To actually navigate into the programs, everything is relatively intuitive as well. You have the ability to view all programs created, if they're tagged by date, by group, by owner, or what has been recently added. Continuing on then, the major pros for Composica are that it's highly collaborative. It allows for multiple logins with different levels of access allowed throughout. It removes the need for geographical constraints between subject matter experts and developers. You can assign different levels of access between developers and contributors and give them different access to various parts of the system. For example, contributors may only have access to edit certain content, whereas developers can edit the content plus the pages that they're on. It allows for the creation of reusable repositories and also includes a robust templating system. This allows you to keep a suite of programs within brand so that you don't have to reuse and recycle and refine the same images, the same information, the same branding as you go from program to program if you're creating multiple ones. And it also has the ability to create its own bespoke interactions and branch scenarios as well. The major cons of Composica, first and foremost, would be the price. The prices I give are only for illustrative purposes only. Please don't quote me on these. But a developer license can run in the region of £1,500 per year per license, and contributors anywhere between £300 and £400 per year. It's also quite complex to use and update for the reasons I had mentioned before. These online tools tend to not have the same sort of interface as most other standalone tools and most other software that people are familiar with. So they require you to start from the beginning when you're learning how to actually use the software. It's also worth mentioning that it is hosted, so you need to have a good, stable internet connection at all times to make the most use out of the software. Moving on then, and to summarise, the main things that we've gone over and the main items that you should keep in mind when choosing the right authoring tool for yourself or your organisation. First and foremost, your budget will determine the type of authoring tool. It would be excellent to be able to go out and buy multiple licenses of Storyline, for example, train up your developers how to use it to make the most out of your e-learning content. But if your e-learning budget requires you to make use of a rapid authoring tool, then perhaps something along the lines of Snap would probably be more cost-effective and more useful. The skill level of your developer should also play a large part in determining which authoring tool you should use. There's no point spending money on half a dozen contribute or Composica licenses if no one has the ability to use it in-house or even no one's used that type of application before. Third, organizational demands such as geographical location of developers and subject matter experts are also important. We have had clients previously where this has been of prime concern. There's been no way to use a single user license or even a multiple user license of e-learning content because there's been such a variance in where the developers and subject matter experts are located. There's been the need to have an online collaborative tool. Fourth, the best tool will often be dictated by the type of content required. This is a very general rule of thumb, but generally speaking, PowerPoint plugins can be very useful for rapid e-learning content. Standalone tools such as Storyline are excellent for storytelling content and content that requires branching. And online tools are quite useful for collaborative work and for custom content. It's also worth noting that multiple tools can be used to create the one program. It used to be even sort of 4 and 5 years ago in the world of e-learning. If you started using one program, you were pretty much tied into that program. You basically had to you had to get all of your content into that because it would export it as one combined package. You now do have the ability to, for example, Storyline, you want to create screen recordings on it. You can then save those out as video and import them into another authoring tool, for example, and then use it to combine them all together. So you don't need to use the one tool for doing absolutely everything. And finally, as you've probably noticed here, and the same goes for the dozens of other authoring tools, each tool has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. There's no one size fits all. Different tools are good for different aspects of e-learning design. Okay, and that is us finished our webinar. I'm going to hand over to Marisa again here to see if we have any questions that we can answer.
Yes, Lee, we had some very good questions throughout that. Okay, so if we don't have time, like we said before, if we don't have time to answer all of them here, we will post it up on the Aurion website, some questions and answers. But Lee, perhaps you can help the client with one of our participants with this question. They've got a template that they use in Articulate. Can they use that now in their Storyline?
Yes, that's a very good question. We can I'll actually start that by chatting briefly about the poll that we ran at the start. The majority of attendants here today have used Articulate Studio previously as the tool of choice. The reason that we didn't use Articulate Studio when composing this webinar is because Storyline's out. They're both at the same price point, so it means that if you're going to be starting afresh, you're better to choose Storyline. It has fewer disadvantages than Articulate Studio has. That said, Articulate Studio is still one of the most commonly used and will probably be so for the foreseeable future. It does have the ability to publish directly into Storyline. You can even import the interactions and quizzes that you've created in Articulate Studio. They can be directly imported to Storyline and used as is. The one proviso for that, though, is that you don't have the ability to publish them out as HTML5 content. They have to remain in Flash because Articulate Studio uses Flash. But you can absolutely port your content over in the same way that you can port content from PowerPoint or Word into Storyline as well. But that's an excellent question.
Okay. Related to that, would you say that Storyline is more stable than Snap and Articulate?
Yes, this is actually, again, a good question because this makes a big difference whenever you're using these authoring tools day in, day out. We've been using Storyline now. We've used it on 3 projects. We've had a total of, I would say, around 15 days development time within those 3 projects. Storyline hasn't crashed for us once in those 15 days. If we were doing those in Articulate or to a lesser extent Snap, I'm sure, well, when we were using them regularly, we would be talking 2-3 crashes a day. Would tend to be the average for us because we'd be using quite video-heavy content. Between the two, Storyline is massively more stable for the simple reason that it doesn't depend on PowerPoint for its stability. It's a completely standalone tool. Okay, and just moving on. Yeah.
Lee, do you actually know the cost of a Storyline license?
Yes, I do indeed. It's approximately, and you can go to the Storyline website to get the exact price, but it's approximately £900 currently. So it's a good time to buy. They've actually kept it as the same price as Articulate Studio for its launch. Okay.
Yes, Lee. Which tool is the best for tracking users?
Okay. A very good question. I think we'll probably need to make this our last one as well. So we will, but I'll answer it very briefly. All authoring tools are quite good at tracking these days. When it comes to the tracking of assessments, they're all quite similar. They all have the ability to track or to publish and to track in SCORM 1.2, SCORM 2004, AICC, and TINCUP, which is one of the new standards. Storyline comes into its own when it comes to the tracking of individual pages. It allows for a proportion of pages to be tracked, not a number. And by that I mean you can have 80% of your course covered by the user, and that will count towards completion. The alternate in other authoring tools, though, is that you can only have pages 1 to 8 out of those 10 pages tracked. So if they don't view any of the pages between 1 and 8, it won't count as completion. So it's just a bit more robust than that, and you can tailor your content in that regard. So, as Marisa said previously, we'll definitely answer the rest of the questions, and there have been some other great questions asked. We'll answer those on the website and send you all a link to see them. And there will also be a recording of this webinar if you'd like to refresh your memory on anything, or if you'd like any of your other colleagues to see it. This webinar is going to comprise a series of webinars. If you do have any other topic in mind for a webinar, please contact us directly, and we'll be more than happy to entertain it as an option going forward. And for more information, please check the Aurion website where we'll be posting more webinars. Okay, and that about wraps up our webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.